camera is on, there you go.
There. All right. It is 5:30. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to all for coming. A reminder, our mission is to encourage everyone to see and be their personal best through successful learning experiences. Become your best. 4 is adoption of the agenda and consent agenda as an order of business, with the identification of items to be taken off the consent agenda for discussion or separate action. I need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda and consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now, let's consider the approval of the consent agenda as adopted. Approve the minutes of the August 20th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. Approve the financial report for the period of July 1, 2024 through August 31st, 2024. And to approve bills for the period of August 1, 2024 through August 31st, 2024 in the amount of $2,418,706.08. Need a motion?
So,
Second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Board and district leadership strategic planning, legislative update.
Yeah,
Scott?
yesterday was the first time we met this year. We met in Sheboygan. It was the Sheboygan County Superintendents and Business Managers, and then our local legislators as well. Very good meeting. Not a lot going on in Madison right now with the election season right around the corner. It'll be January before they really hit the ground running again. But as superintendents, there were 3 issues that came to light, and interesting that it echoes a lot of our conversations. Special education and funding for special education was a very hot topic, and it was reiterated from an equity standpoint, and also the ability to meet the needs of our kids, that we need help in this area, and that's a drum that we continue to beat. I know that was something that was brought up at these meetings regularly last year as well. So that was on the front burner. Childcare was brought up as well, and it's something that's of interest to all county districts. Ways to meet the needs of our people, and then also ways to meet the needs of our families throughout the community as well. People want to look at things creatively. It might be an area we can partner with our legislators as well.
That's cool.
And then lastly, all county schools received an open records request, and we addressed that with the legislators as well. In this request, it was a request for all family emails, phone numbers, things of that nature. And in an open records request, you don't have to disclose the purposes for those things or anything like that. But it was a request that we denied, but it was brought up to the legislators. I think they were surprised by the request, and the question was raised, if we were to introduce or seek to introduce new policy or regulations as far as what constitutes open records and a justifiable request, what would that look like? How would we get that started? And the 3 legislators in the room said, well, that would start with us. And the eyebrows were raised a little bit as well. So, not sure if we'll gain traction on that, but at least it was something that we were able to share in a unified fashion, and also got their interest. So we'll see if anything comes of that.
Yeah.
That's about it then from yesterday's meeting.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Finance, Buildings, and Grounds, consider action to approve the 2024-2025 preliminary budget to be officially published in the annual meeting. Amy, do you want to take us? You used to sit over here.
I used to. I don't anymore.
Wow, it's going to take me a while.
Yes, let's go through this. There's a lot to go over. So we're going to start with the budget recap. sheet that has orange on it. This is a summary of the 24-25 budget that we're gonna go through in more detail in a minute, but just as I have in the previous years, up on top are our revenues. I'm gonna just quickly go through those. The 100s where it says interfund transfer, that is the transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27 to cover any special ed costs that are not covered by a grant or by handicapped aid through the state. So this is about an increase of 200,000 from last year's budget. And it's considered a revenue in Fund 27, which is why it's on top, but it's considered an expense in Fund 10, so that's below. Taxes and fees, local sources are the 200s. That's right now budgeted at 10,555,800. I want to stress how preliminary this is. We don't get any information from DPI until October 15th regarding our, our tax levy, our mill rate. So right now, everything is pretty much a guess or forecasted. But we also haven't had our third Friday count, which is this Friday, which will weigh in heavily on the revenue limit worksheet that we get that gives us the final answers to all of these. But right now, this is kind of what I'm projecting. Inter-district, that is our open enrollment. Again, we get revenue for kids that come in, and then below is the expense for kids that open enroll out. CISA grant in the 500s, that's just, it's a small amount, but 24,000. State sources, which are the 600s, that is equalized aid, grants, things like that, all from the state. That's about 17.3 right now. Federal sources, those are all grants too, 1.1, and then other sources, just miscellaneous revenue that we get. So right now, our budget is projected at $34,040,000 for revenue. And then down below are our expenses. The first line are salaries for all staff. Second line is benefits for all staff. And the third line, purchase services, so open enrollment is in there, private school vouchers, which if you remember from last year, vouchers doubled last year, so I have no idea what's gonna happen with them this year. But I just used the number that I have from last year so far. Non-capital, the 400s, supplies and things like that, around 1.1 million. Capital building technology is the 500s, around 730,000. Leases are our copiers, insurance policies, that went up about $40,000. I looked into it and they increased the value of our buildings a lot. So, so that went up quite a bit. The transfer to special ed, there's that expense, and then just a few other things. So we're looking at about 34.8 million in expenses. If you look below to the balance, you'll see a negative 764,500. So right now, that's the deficit that I'm projecting. But I want to make note that there are two items in this budget that we have to look at separately. One of them is the Fairview roofing project that we completed over the summer. That's about 350,000, and it is in this budget because we will be expensing it in this fiscal year. However, there's also a TID closure in the area, and we talked about this a few meetings ago, that the amount that we're getting is lower than what I had anticipated, but the Fairview roofing project and the Horizon entrance project are coming out of those funds. But I also don't know if we're gonna get them before June 30th of '25. So, we have to account for the expense in here, assuming we're not going to get those funds. But if we do, they technically replace the expense. It's confusing, I know, but if you have any questions about that, just let me know. The other
I'm good with this.
thing that we have in this budget is there is a special ed expense in there of about $200,000. We have a student that needed different support services, and that is something that the district has to cover the cost of. So that is also in this budget. That 200,000 is, right now, it's an estimate. But it could potentially be that high. We had some of those expenses in 23-24, and there is what they call, it's a high-cost special ed aid, but you have to apply for it for the previous years. So I'm in the process of doing all the paperwork for what we expensed in 23-24, which would then be revenue in 24-25, which would potentially help offset some of this. And that revenue is not included in here because I don't have final numbers or anything like that yet. So, and then so on, year after year, you do that if you have students that are high cost. So this budget, this deficit of 765,000 is made up, a lot is made up by those two things. So, we always have, usually around this time, we come in with like $700,000 or $800,000 deficit, and then we end up, that's not how our year ends up. So as the month goes on, I'll get more final numbers, and, hopefully we can shrink that a little bit, but those are the two costs that would have to remain regardless. Okay.
Amy, I'm just wondering from a clarity standpoint, would it make sense for us to have, in a report like this, that we have a total revenue known and then anticipated revenue sources or potential revenue sources, and then a grand total below that? So you could see the revenue number and also clearly delineate, okay, we think this might happen, we think this might happen as two extra line items or three. And then again, because we certainly know we have the expense, right? And then, so we see this big negative number, but from a clarity standpoint, it may be easier storytelling if we had those, okay, this is what we know for revenue, here's some anticipated sources for revenue, this gives us a grand total here, so we get to understand the potential of the over-under on this whole thing. I'm just thinking. I
Yeah.
don't know what other people think, but would it help? It would also delineate those sources, so then we can look back and say, hey, whatever happened with this? And, well, that didn't happen, or that did, but in.
I've fed everything into the spreadsheet. But I can break this down and,
I don't know.
based on what we know.
More of that potential with the special ed dollars of what we could potentially get, in comparison to that 200,000? Or are we really?
You mean for the high-cost aid?
Yeah.
once I can get the application, in, we're still trying to figure out how to get into it, and submit the cost, then I can figure out, you're supposed to get 25% of the cost that you spent the previous year. So,
Is that for overall?
No.
That's just for the high school?
it's just for that one,
Instance.
What was it,
Instant.
$200,000 last year for us?
no, the student started going in, I think, January or February. So, it's
So
not
we're
as
talking
much.
25% of 40%. Not quite half of the year, right? Or is that-
Yeah, right. I mean,
About
I could
Okay.
pull the expense out because they're in a certain account number.
We're not
But,
looking at getting a $200,000 grant,
No.
because we're looking at $25,000 grant, potentially. I'm using the word grant, that might not be. the
Yeah.
right phrase.
right, like, we'll have a cost of around 200,000. In 25, 26, we should be able to get 25% of that back. But it goes into the next year's
Got it.
budget. So you expense everything in one year, you get some revenue in the following year.
And the only reason why I'm asking, 'cause one is just one clarification, but then two, even to your point, Bob, I'm not sure how much delineating things out will actually help in the situation, because we're waiting on the TID closure pieces towards that 350 with the Fairview roof, and it's only going to be a very small percentage that we're going to get for this high-cost special ed, so I'm not sure.
Just to
Have a separate
understand,
line,
right? It's
right.
it's the storytelling is all it is,
Sure.
rather than, this is a big negative number. There are some offsets to that big and I just wonder, do we delineate it on a report like this? Does it make it easier for people to understand those items?
So I know, I've done it before at the annual meeting, pulled out costs that we knew were like one-time things, projects or whatever. So I definitely will do that again, at our annual
So,
meeting.
for example, the roof and
Yeah,
that'll be,
it's noted.
okay.
Asterisks, like that's what I did there.
Yeah.
That's noted, that's not really an operational expense, that's a capital expense, but it's in our budget.
Right. Now, if
Even-
the auditors close that TID on, in timely fashion, it's not even going to be an expense because the revenue will get here before June 30th. But we don't know. They said they were gonna try and work fast. So it's better to expense it and then, at least then it's accounted for.
It's accounted for, we know it's there.
Yeah.
But even to the point of including that asterisk of the $40,000 increase of liability insurance, I mean, I think it's worth showing, hey, this is another increase point
Right.
that we had that led to this higher number.
Yep, I can do that. I can, just I can note things like larger changes that,
Because we also had to agree on an insurance increase, didn't we?
it was small. And we didn't have to, account for that expense. Wouldn't we be better off? And they said that we still get something in the form of aid because of vouchers, but I didn't get a clear explanation or a formula.
So this assessment of the private school vouchers, this 891,000, which is a pretty big number. Is it just, tell me how that works. Is a private school voucher, same amount? Or is it based on where the child is going and the expense of that school? I mean, is it the tuition cost of, or what, how much is it?
My understanding is they get a flat rate per student.
Okay,
If it's similar to what it was last year, a private school voucher, so. For example, my children opened enrolled from Elkhart Lake to Plymouth.
okay,
Plymouth received, let's say it's $7,000. If my kids would have gone to St. Mary Springs, St. Mary's Springs would have gotten maybe $9,000. They would have gotten more money going to a private versus a public in the open enrollment process.
Yeah.
We would have to fact check my numbers on that, but I believe for some reason, private gets more, the vouchers get more than the public do in a
They do.
move.
At the annual meeting last year, I had one of the slides was a chart of what public education gets for students and what private school vouchers get.
It was like 4,000.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's a considerable difference for, not sure what reason.
Right.
But the revenue we get from the state is based on our enrollment in our schools. So
Yeah.
this is, we're not getting, are we getting revenue for the state for that private school child? And then
No,
they're getting, and we're passing it on in a voucher?
no. Very little. They'll say that there's some revenue tied into like your equalization aid for vouchers but I can't ever figure out what that amount is. But the vouchers are an expense. I mean, it
Yeah.
goes on our tax levy.
Big number.
Yes, and this is last year's number, at 23, 24. I don't have 24, 25s yet. I remember last year, it doubled. And it just shows up on our spreadsheet, in October. So I'm hoping that it doesn't go up that much again, but I know that last year, there was a big increase in how much private schools got for vouchers, but we only got an increase of like 325 per student. They got more than we did. The voucher amount went up more than our per pupil revenue limit went up.
So in our legislative update meetings,
Right.
this would be a nice thing to have one of the legislators come in and explain to all of us. I would love to hear how this works.
Well, special ed is even more interesting, which we will kind of touch on when we go through this publication, because there's a even bigger disparity there.
But at least the special ed, we are providing a service that the state is providing something to us for, right?
Something,
Right. Okay,
something.
all right. And then the only other thing is the choice in and out, and that's a delta of 263,000. So again, if we get more people choicing in than choicing out, that would be a win for the district, so.
Right. Historically, it's been around,
I know.
the difference is, but.
I don't like talking about history, I just want to talk about the future, so.
So if you look in the column where it says year-to-date, we talk about the importance of a healthy fund balance.
Okay,
And you can see that we've received about $6,200 in revenue, and we have expensed about 4 million already. So that's why our fund balance and why we focus on having a good fund balance is so important, because we don't get funding right away when the school year starts, and you have to be able to cover that without short-term borrowing. So we don't have to short-term borrow.
and how many years is that now that we've not had to do that?
It's got, well, I think it's at least 6,
Yeah,
at least 6.
that's great.
So with that, we ended last school year, very, very good. So you can pull out the budget adoption sheet now. If you look in the middle column where it says unaudited 23-24, these are our audited numbers, but they're not finalized at DPI, so that's why it says unaudited. If you look at the top, it says that our fund balance in the beginning of the 23-24 school year was 8.645 million. And then if you go down to the ending fund balance, you'll see it's 9.62. So we actually ended the year with a surplus of $977,000, which is why we don't get too worried about, you know, the deficit that we usually present in September, because things just work themselves out. We had a lot of grants last year, a lot of grants, and we closed out the ESSER 3 grant, so all of the ESSER funds have been accounted for and received. So those are no longer in the budget, but there were funds in there that we thought maybe we would spend. You had to spend them and claim the balance by September 30th of 2024, so the end of this month, which we had like 400,000 in there yet, and it would have been difficult to expense that amount in that short amount of time. So I just moved things over into the ESSER fund during the audit and just expensed the whole thing. And then, so that's why this is so large. 400,000 is at least from the ESSER funds.
Okay.
So during the audit, I'm able to assign funds. You can restrict funds, which then they have to be spent for a specific thing. You can assign funds with an idea of what you think you're going to use those funds on in the next fiscal year. So Scott and I talked, and we decided to set aside 500,000 of that 977 for things that we know need to be addressed. One of them you've heard about is Act 20. We probably have about $180,000 worth of expenses to meet all of the requirements of Act 20. We have equipment needs in our custodial and grounds keeping department that need to be addressed. The Parkview playground amount that we pledged to give them is in there. I'm trying to think what else.
I think that hits it.
That's quite a bit of it. And so if we don't expense that, then, I mean, it goes back into fund balance. But here's the other odd thing about school district budgets. Let's say we expense all 500,000 out of this budget, and we still end the year with, just say, a surplus of $100,000. Then this 500,000 that's assigned from fund balance really never was spent. It just went into fund balance, and then we would be adding 100,000 on top, you know, at the end of the 24-25. So you earmark it, but if your current budget has the funds to, you know, expense it, then it really you'd never hit your fund balance. Now, let's say we spend our whole budget in 24-25 and it's zero, and we spent this 500,000, we would end 24-25 in a deficit of 500,000, which means then we took it from fund balance. It typically, I mean, I wouldn't anticipate that happening, but that is how that would work if all of those things happened.
Well, that's clear as mud.
I know. So let's keep going through this.
Keep the misery.
Okay, so you just really want to look, so the middle column is last year's 23-24 school year revenue and expenses in the funds that we're talking about. On the right is the budget that we just went over on this budget recap. So those two are the same. The right column and the budget recap are the same. And what I just explained, if you look on the right, it shows you our beginning fund balance of 9.62. If we spent everything that this budget says and ended the year with a deficit of 764.5, our fund balance would be 8.8 million. That's kind of that's how that reads. So this is all the same. So this first section is all Fund 10. It just goes through all of our revenue sources, the 100s, 200s, 300s. And you can compare the two columns. You can actually compare all three. And it will give you an idea of how those numbers have changed. If you look at local sources 210 taxes, you'll see that, you know, I'm anticipating our tax levy is going to go up because the valuation in Plymouth went up like 7%. So the tax levy is going to increase, but our mill rate is probably going to go down again. Let's see, what else is like kind of blaring you, down in the 600s, state aid. I kept the state aid the same right now for equalization aid, just because we don't know and I don't want to overestimate. Federal sources, you can see in the 730s, you'll see last year we budgeted 1.286, that's ESSER. And that includes some other grants, but that is the majority of ESSER. And you can see that that's not in the budget for this year. Flipping the page over, you can see the comparison of revenues for Fund 10 only from last year, how we ended the year compared to this year, what we're budgeting right now. But if you look to the far left, you can see that, you know, that was 27.7 million. This year it's 28.5. So, I mean, the revenue slowly goes up, but not as fast as the expenses. The next section is all Fund 10 expenses. So, you know, they're usually pretty comparable, but all of your 100s, that's, you know, all of your instruction, and then the 200s is benefits and support and things like that. 400s, non-program transactions, that is our intertransfer from Fund 10 to 27. And then you can see the two, you know, just the difference in the revenue from 23-24 to 24-25. Again, this is very, very fluid. The next fund is Fund 21. That is our donation fund. We don't budget any revenues or expenses because we have no idea how that's gonna go. But you can see that the fund balance in that one changed a little bit. That's due to interest. That's in the middle column again. We earned a lot in interest over last school year. Then the next section is Fund 27. So if you flip the page, you will see the very top line is the interfund transfer of what we transferred in 23-24 from 10 to 27 and what I'm anticipating for 24-25. Typically, this transfer number is lower than what we budget, just due to sometimes the aid amount changes throughout the year, or we get more than what we anticipated we would, which is another reason why we ended last year with, you know, a surplus like we did, because it was about like $200,000 difference. But right now, when you're building a budget, all of your Fund 27 expenses minus your grants and your handicapped aid has to balance to zero. And the only way to do that is to put in a transfer amount that is higher. So it typically comes in lower, but right now, that's what we have to base it off of. And then going down, in the middle, under the state sources, that is the categorical aid, DPI refers to it as handicapped aid. You can see that from 22-23 to 23-24, it did go up, but it didn't go up as much as, what the superintendents and everyone was talking about at the legislative meeting that he went to. This is an area where the disparity is very clear. Special ed program here is about $5.4 million, which you can see toward the bottom. But if you look, I mean, the handicapped aid of 1.3 million, and then in the 730s, the DPI projects, we get like 1.9. So it's not even 50% of the cost of the programs, which is why your transfer is so big. And then you can see the difference in what the actual costs were 23-24 compared to what we're projecting in 24-25. It's over $200,000 increase in that. So then you can flip the page, and that is just some more special ed stuff with expenses and whatnot in there. And then the next section is Fund 39, which is our debt service. That's pretty static. The next section is Fund 49. You may remember when we did the football turf project, that was, we, quote unquote, borrowed from fund balance and had pledges for 5 years. So every year that we collect money from those pledges, it reduces the amount that we need to cover yet. So we only budget revenue in there, and we have about $264,000 left over the next, I think it's 2 years. The next section is food service. Last year, they ended the year with a loss of about $65,000. Some of that was intentional. There was some equipment, or I think equipment that we bought, and food costs were very high. So for 24-25, anticipating a $50,000 loss, but that is because we are budgeting very conservative with the CEP program that we have in place, and kind of learning and figuring out what the reimbursement rate will be, and, will we come ahead or will we not? So we budgeted very conservatively. If you flip over, Fund 80 ended last year with a loss of $50,000. Again, that was intentional. They did some remodeling projects, be published in the paper. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Amy? So we need to have a motion to approve the budget as presented?
And then anything that changes in this budget will be presented at the annual meeting.
But this is what's going to get published in the paper
For now, yep.
for now? Okay. Between now and publishing in the paper, if it's, you'll just update it accordingly.
Yeah, there's a change form that I have to do, and
Okay.
at the committee of the whole in October, I don't know if we'd talk about it, but I won't have any numbers until October 15th from DPI. So in the next month, as I find things out, or, if anything changes with staffing or, things like that, then it gets updated, and it'll all be summarized and brought to the annual meeting.
But your third Friday student count will be this Friday, right?
It's
Yeah.
this Friday, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a special ed report, it's the SE 1505.
Okay,
That hasn't been submitted yet, it's not, we can't submit it yet, but once that's submitted, then we could have a good estimate of what our categorical handicapped aid for special ed would be. So that number may change too.
Okay. So, we need a motion to approve this budget?
I move that we approve the 24-25 preliminary budget.
Second, someone?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Amy. Moving on. Consider approval of additional changes to 2024-25 teacher framework. Amy, take us there.
Yep, this is HOSA that we talked about at the committee of the whole meeting. You know, we went over the great things that program does. It's been around for quite a few years. And we're just looking to add it to our Schedule C schedule of payments for, right now, $750.
Okay, so we need a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the changes to the teacher framework, specifically Schedule C.
Second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Consider approval of redistricting Camp Anakiji property.
And this was discussed last week at Committee of the Whole as well. Camp Anakiji is seeking some relief from a permitting standpoint for construction that's going on. Perhaps ceding a small parcel that currently is identified as part of the Plymouth School District to Elkhart Lake. Again, there's no tax benefit to us currently. This is something that would be forecasted down the road if Camp Anakiji were ever sold and privately developed and so on. I did contact Mr. Holden the day after Committee of the Whole. He understood the request to seek our ability to perhaps move a line or commit a smaller piece of the parcel or things like that. He knew our timeline. I have not heard back from him, so I don't have any additional information for you at this point.
Okay. So, his timeline with the state is,
You know, he has not given me a firm date. It sounds like it's one of those situations where, you know, state would have liked it done a while ago, and here we
He's
are, so
building
they're
already.
giving him grace on that, but he has not given me a firm drop dead date or anything like that.
okay. So, discussion, do we want to move on this or wait and find out if they just move the line a little bit? What's your thought? Anyone?
I mean, I think at this point, especially with the type of land that it is, I don't see it as something for us to expend more energy on it.
What type of one?
It was hilly and marshy, was that?
There's no.
Yeah, no, it's a steep slope.
Steep slope.
It's
Steep
That's what it was,
slope
okay.
and,
Sledding hill on the one end.
Gotcha. The other side is the marsh, or whatever,
And,
right,
and fairly narrow.
right.
Yeah.
I think it was necessary to ask the questions around it, but I don't see this as something in the short term to continue to sit on it.
so, do you want to make a motion then?
I
To-
was the only one that said anything. Does anyone else have
We can
opinions?
discuss it further, but if, motion and second, and then we can discuss further if you want to put it in form of motion.
That's fine, I'll make a motion that we approve the redistricting of Camp Anakichi's property, specific to that.
Request from Anakiji.
I'll second.
All right, we'll discuss further then. Other thoughts?
Did anyone ask Elkhart to secede us?
That was discussed, but Elkhart would be giving up like, yeah. So Elkhart has the lake property, which has got all the
They
value.
weren't responsive to the request.
Yeah. So there's no chance anyone's going to cede that the other way. So,
It wouldn't even be there.
yeah, the Elkhart piece is, what the Elkhart district is.
Well, there's two lots there.
Oh,
They would
yeah.
give us the one that's not.
Well, they would give us the one that's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Those also be the one that built
Nice build. So,
it. Had to ask.
You can ask, yeah. None of it's taxable, so, and I'm guessing if it was ever developed, that building would not stand. Someone would do something else with it. Right,
Hunting resort.
yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, if, all in favor of the rezoning?
Bob, do we want to indicate in the motion the specific number of that section?
That's what I was,
And I-
Yes, if we can, as noted that, yeah. Otherwise, we just ceded all of Sheboygan County. Yeah, we don't want that.
No, it's the 11.53 acres, parcel number that Jonathan probably had, it's 590-182-60062.
Okay. So we have that in the motion,
Show you.
that parcel.
Do you need it? Or,
I don't need it, Janelle just read it, if we all are in agreement.
okay.
That's the parcel? All right. So, all in favor, say yes. Yes? Opposed? Okay. And Elkhart Lake can send us a card.
Adam owes us.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it's the right thing to do for kids, so. All right? Let's move on. Consider gifts and corresponding budget adjustments.
Yeah, we'd request the following adjustments for gifts received. A donation of $671.76 from the Plymouth High School German Club for transportation to Chicago. A donation of $119.86 from the Parkview PTK for transportation to Otter Moon Farm, and a donation of $2,500.18 from the Riverview Activity Club for transportation to Kohler Andre State Park, Bay Beach, and Fireman's Park.
I need a motion to accept these gifts and make the corresponding budget adjustments.
make a motion to accept these gifts.
They're sleeping on this side, Aaron. It's really up to you and Tony right now.
I'll second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, thank you again for the generosity of our community. Consider approval of the first reading of Neola Policy Updates, Volume 33. Number 2, Janelle, you want to just
Refresh your memory.
refresh us on this?
Last week I mentioned that Kathy Turner, myself, Scott, Katrina, and a number of our district admins met with the Neola rep in August, and we went through all the proposed updates for the policies, and the different departments kind of went through, like, updates to the transportation pieces, the food services, and the wellness plans. And we just wanted to highlight a few that we thought would bring to our attention. So the ones I mentioned last week, that there's a policy 5430 on class rank, or I guess we'll start with the other one. There's another one on board meetings, and we are just adding in extra clause saying that if there is a closed session, that we need to make certain that we contact our counsel, and then if you want to attend virtually, that we need to get permission from our outside legal counsel, and that that person who might attend virtually make certain that they're alone and private, and no information will be shared or accessible to the public. Then the policies, there's two of them, 5430 and 5460. They're kind of updates to the class rank and a graduation requirements. The UW system is adopting a new automatic graduation or automatic admission program, and to be in compliance with their proposed ranking of how to
students will be accepted into their programs. We're just adding one line to our one policy saying that we will comply with the ranking system set by the UW system. And then for graduation requirements, the DPI and the state is pushing that we should have, everyone will have half of a credit of personal finance. We already have that in our policies, but we're just eliminating the reference saying it has to be like, or could be in economics or a junior achievement. We're just removing one extra clause in there, so we're not changing graduation requirements. And then there were a couple updates in sections 5610 and a new section 5610.03. It's regarding suspensions and expulsion requirements, and the new section 5610.03 is more about pre-expulsion conferences and all the steps that one can take. And that, again, was worked through with our admin team.
Good, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to approve the first reading of the Neola policy updates.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Period of public participation? Okay, you guys.
Folks or kids, as long as they're 3 by September 1st, we follow that with the school district, and then as long as they're potty trained, so we still have spots, we'll still accept children. Our Friday play group, it's gonna start this Friday, it's for all ages. Home Alone is for grades 3 to 6. It has basic safety concepts, and that is at the end of September, so September 30th and October 1st at Held at Horizon. Middle school dance team for grades 6 through 8. They're going to perform during Riverview boys basketball games, and practices begin October 1st. Swim lessons, ages 6 and up. Those are going to be starting on Saturday mornings on October 5th. Then we have a boys basketball camp, grades 3 through 8, starting Monday, October 7th. And then a babysitting clinic, grades 5 through 8, ages, or so 10 and up. That'll be on October 14th and 16th at Riverview.
Wow, lots of stuff. That's good. Thank you. Okay, foundation,
Yes.
Janelle.
And the Plymouth Education Foundation met last week. Scott was in the meeting too, so there's a lot of activity that ramps up with homecoming week for the Education Foundation. They're conducting change wars in the elementary schools, so any funds received will actually benefit the teachers' wish list. So teachers, encourage your students to chip in the fund wars, and that will return the favor back to the teachers. We are also, for the Education Foundation, is selling water bottles at the homecoming game, and they're working on an ornament. So there will be a collectible ornament coming for attraction. So come visit the Panther football game on homecoming night and support the Education Foundation and get some fun swag. Also, the Education Foundation, that I didn't know before, that they'll help with reunions. If you have a class that wants to run a reunion, check in with the Education Foundation. They'll help you like reconnect with the alumni and give tours to the high school and or Riverview, if that used to be the high school up until 1965. So they are running tours for a couple classes for the reunions. Nice. And they've also penciled in the preliminary plans for a spring fundraiser. It would be the big biannual event fundraising, and they're targeting for late February, and it might be a music trivia bingo night. So they're working out details. So coming attraction in next February.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Family Resource Center, Kat.
Aside from all the regular programs that they continue to have going on, parents as teachers, bring your own baby, baby book club, they are running a developmental screening, and it's next week, Thursday, September 26th, and Friday, September 27th. They will be screening children up through age 5 for language skills, problem solving, fine and large motor skills, personal and social skills, and hearing and vision screening. That sounded a little bit like if it's available when you sign up. You have to visit the website and register, and it will be held at Generations.
Great, great. And our staff actually helps with that screening, right? That's our group. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Personnel, board will consider, go ahead.
Yes.
This is not good.
The board will consider the resignation of Karen Johnson, Food Service Director for the Plymouth School District, effective October 11th, 2024. Karen has been in the district for over 11 years. And before we discuss further, I just want to thank her personally. While I have not gotten to work with her all that long, her impact on the system is clear, apparent. She's a special person. She's done a tremendous job, and she will be missed. And we wish her nothing but the best.
Hold on, we don't have to approve her resignation.
I say you don't.
Ditto to that. Karen, you've done fantastic for us, and it's really been exciting every time you've come in here and talked about what you've done for us, so you will be missed. So, all right, someone has to make a motion, and it won't be me.
Make a motion, we accept the resignation of Karen Johnson, effective October 11th.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good luck, Karen. You can always come back.
And then once again, no need for action, but we always list our support staff update as well. So that's listed in your packet for your perusal also.
Okay, thank you. President's report. I'm just going to be brief. We are talking about values in the community ed and, or committee of the whole, community ed. Committee of the whole, and Aaron, you brought it up. You said, well, why, what are we doing? And just to be clear on the activity again, it's about understanding where we're going as a district. That's what we're doing. And when we delineate what each of the values and the pillars are, and what it looks like when we do when we achieve what we say our values are, that paints a picture. And that's the picture that we then need to hand off to the administration, which we've done. And now Scott will take it with the administration and say, all right, if you want to get to all these places, if you want the stakeholder experience for academics, if you want this experience for students, staff, community, and families, then to get you there, we have to take these steps now. And that's really the idea of everything we're doing here, is that we're laying out the pathway where we want this district to go. And the best way to say this is where the district needs to go is look at what we say we value in this district. And then we took the time to reflect on what does that look like when we are following our values. And now is our chance to say, here's where we are at today. This is where we've said we want to be. And it's up to Scott and his team to tell us, how are we going to get there? And where's the priorities today that we really need to spend the most time on? Because you can't do it all at once. So that's the purpose of what we were doing in that exercise. And at the next committee of the whole, right? Scott's going to come back with the input from the staff and where we're going to go next. All right? So I look forward to that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay? And that's all I've got. Turn it over to Scott.
We have a couple of student recognitions we'd like to bring forward. First of all, Campbell Booth has been selected to be on the first ever Student Leadership Council for the WIAA. She is only one of 27 statewide students to be represented on this council, and it was a very rigorous process. There were 289 applicants for the position, so she is to be commended to be one of 27 that's going to represent us. So that's very exciting. And from Connie Lund, at the end of August 2024, graduate Danica Pickard received her ProStart National Certificate of Achievement. To achieve this, she needed to pass the ProStart Year 1 and Year 2 exams, which are through the National Restaurant Association. She also needed 400 hours of culinary experience satisfying at least 52 of the 70 competencies needed for this work experience. So congratulations goes out to Danica. We know she's left us, but we want to make sure we recognize her for that achievement. Upcoming events. Homecoming week is coming up rapidly. October 4th is the Friday of that week, but I believe the 29th is Sunday. And we've got our boys volleyball kicking off that Sunday and our girls powder puff and so on. We have class tug of wars Monday through Thursday. Friday, in addition to the game Friday night, of course, we have brat fry at 5:30. Parade 4:15, pep assembly 1 to 3. Oh, we've got a lot going on that Friday. Yes, and speaking of parade, we look forward to participating in that as
Oh, yeah.
well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And just lastly, just want a little reminder as far as the board meetings in October, they're a little goofy. We've got October 7th for Committee of the Whole. October 15th then will be our regular board meeting. And then the annual meeting will take place on October 22nd. So we get to see each other a little bit more next month.
All right.
And that's all I have.
Good. Thank you, Scott. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Look at you.
Second,
All in favor, say yes.
yes.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.